hat, and she says, uh, please seal here. Anyway, that's sort of the kind of stuff that went on. But anyway, Harry was just seemed like he was always around. He was there, just never causing problems, or just a wonderful poet. I'm just really looking forward to hearing some of his poetry read today. I'm not reading any myself, but just want to welcome you all, and let's hope for another 55 years of Beyond Baroque. I won't be here. In fact, I never thought when I started it that it would be here 55 years, or that I'd be here 96. So anyhow, enjoy. Thank you all.
Thank you, George, and here to all of that. So next up, we have Amy Gersler. Amy, take it away.
Okay, let's get this party started with the reading portion of the tribute to Harry Northup, whose work is so full of and based on love and dignity and a kind of deep, unassailable, genuine humanism that the work just radiates. And Quentin talked about the work's elegance, and I think that's a great word to associate with Harry and his work, that there's an emotional intelligence and elegance that permeates the work. But as with all really wonderful and true poetry, the work should speak for itself. I'm going to read two poems by Harry. The first one is called The Images We Possess, Kill the Capturing. I know that sounds like an image trying to deny its own mother. She worked behind bars in a post office. This morning, after we took Dylan to school, we drove up the coast to Sunset. As short as the journey was, it was peaceful and warm. We sat in the car and watched 7 surfers, all of them wearing wetsuits, the second hot day in a row. Catalina could be seen from the coast highway. Only later did we notice the smog above the oil tanker in the southern end of the bay. As often as not, we talk about poetry and symbols and myth and how far is it to Mount Baldy. We see its caps, snowy. A squirrel was looking straight ahead, looking over the top of the cliff, overlooking sunset. A high amount of rocks and earth, then pushed up. Rocks below where May surfers have broken their teeth, at least one in the front. I honked, and in no time it was gone, turned and went back down to safety without taking time to think. Even in our own house, sometimes we talk low, sitting in front of the TV. Sometimes we sit looking at the TV with the TV off and talk to each other. Poetry is speaking and listening to each other. The mother I know, the son I had, was patient and loving and hardworking and kind and firm. I thought about my mother today when the ocean was its bluest. She had blue eyes. Where does the ocean get its color? From the wind it blows past. In the morning when it is cool, we talk to understand what it is that is sometimes blue and sometimes gray. And we drove to see how bad the damage had been. You have heard this before, and you will hear it again. I love my mother. Ocean, ocean. The second and last, for me, poem of this reading is a poem that's almost like a kind of lyric list of writing prompts, although it's much more than that. This is called Make a Poem. Make a poem from pavement, fragmented and black, uneven, broken. Make a poem from an experience, memory, grief. Make an email a poem. Make a poem from tweets. Write it at intervals over a day. Make a poem from death and hunger. Make a poem out of embracing a fear. Make a poem out of wanting to tell someone something. Make a poem out of fear, vulnerability, poverty of spirit. Make a poem from poems that you've read. Poems come from poems. Read the language school poets as well as the romantic poets. While you struggle with learning the many forms, learn the tradition of poetry, especially the epics. Make a poem from tennis, sweet potatoes, and ruin. Make a poem from beauty and disgrace. Make a poem from bowing down to a greater craftsman. Make a poem out of women and men and trees with jacaranda blossoms fallen on the sidewalk. Make a poem from hills and viaduct and sod houses and country roads and a 2-story red brick schoolhouse. Out of pride and discounted emotions. Make a poem at evening. Thank you and bless you, Harry. You are a wonder.
Well, I guess I'm going to introduce myself to everybody. Hello, friends of Harry E. Northup. It's really an honor to be here to honor my friend, Harry E. Northup, who I met probably, I think now it's about 15 years ago. And, we had met at a meeting place in Hollywood. It was then known as the Silver Spoon, which was a diner. And within that diner every day was a collection of artists and poets and writers and screenwriters, TV writers, newsmen, actors, character actors, wannabe actors, directors, producers. It was a real conglomeration of people that would meet every day, and we all knew each other. We might not speak to each other intimately every day, but we would all know each other enough to say hello and stop by a table and, show our respect. And Harry and I met through a fellow actor, Don Sherman, who was a comedian, a writer, a soothsayer. He was quite a character. And he introduced me to Harry E. Northup, and we became fast friends. And we did so much together that we actually created a blog, which is still running today. It's called Times Times 3, which you can find on the internet. And Times Times 3 was called 3 because there was the three of us that started it and put the input in, and that was Don Sherman, Harry E. Northup, and myself, David Lloyd Glover. So it was a real pleasure and an honor that I would be asked to read one of Harry's poems. And I pulled some of Harry's books off my bookshelf above my desk and started reading poems, looking for the right message. And in fact, I looked at this book, which if you don't have it, you should have it. It's called East Hollywood Memorial to Reason. Many of the poems actually in this book I've posted on our Times Times 3 blog. I mean, they're terrific poems. So what I decided to do was to let Harry's book decide which poem I was going to read today in his honor. So I just held the book up, and then whatever page it opened to, I was going to read that poem. And how appropriate that this was the poem. Lunch. And the men have been friendly, and the women too. Frank talked about seeing the debt at BAFTA. Don said he takes 2 pills a day, 7 days on, 7 off. plus an injection once a week. I may have to drive to his home in the valley and take him to Dodger Stadium. Ian, Robert, and I sit in a red booth to the right of the register as you walk in. Frank, Richard, Diane, John, Dina, Jimmy, David sit in the north room. Don, Mabon, Robert sit outside. David Lloyd Glover comes later. Asher sits at the counter, reads the Times. Bob and Robert from Executive Leasing sit in a booth near us. Jennifer sits near us also. Bill Wintersole, Cynthia Frost, John C., Michael M., Joe Turkel, Burr, Chuck McCann join us. Greek owners, Andy and Vera, waiters, Mike, Gloria, Catalina, Isella. Harry E. Northup, 2015, from East Hollywood Memorial to Reason. And this was from page 143. Harry, it's really a pleasure to know you, and I hope I will be asked back to read another one of your poems the next time we honor Harry E. Northup. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was lovely. Next up, we have the great Jack Skelly. Jack, please join us.
Thank you, Quentin. Hi, everybody. Wow, thanks. It's super duper thrill. Thank you, Susan and Essay, for inviting me. Everybody at Beyond Baroque, of course. So this is a big thrill. I've always loved Harry's poems. From the first time I saw him perform at Beyond Baroque, and then started collecting his books. I have a whole pile of them here on my desk. And the thing about, people are going to give their impressions of Harry's work. To me, it's the thing about Harry's craft. To me, is that it doesn't come off as a craft. I feel like especially when Harry's delivering his own poems, it's like an immediate experience. It's not like the words are mediating between what Harry's feeling or thinking and it's your experience of it. The poem itself is the experience with Harry. Anyway, I'm going to read. Harry was gracious enough to give me a bunch of poems for my magazine at the time. This was back in 1980, Barney magazine. And here's one of them. I'll just read one poem. It's called Messenger Killing. Heroin is the daddy. Heroin is the boss. No matter how much money you got or how high your position, you start heroin, and heroin is all you think about. Two things with heroin. One, the shooting. Two, the drug. Seeing the blood come into the syringe, knowing you hit a vein, shoot in and count. 1 to 10. If you hit 10, you know. If you hit 10, you know you were alive. If you hit 4 and that's all, you're dead. But you don't think about death. Heroin, getting more of it. Everything is directed toward heroin. That's all you think about is heroin. Lenny Bruce's end came when he got started up with the Catholic Church. The head dude in each city's Catholic church cracked down on the police force. All Lenny asked for was for a definition of what obscenity was. His last rap was about Jesus and Moses. What if they came to earth today? What is meaning? That's what a junkie asks himself over and over. Take all your worries and magnify them thousands of times. Heroin takes you straight to oblivion. No more worries. Oblivion. Have they taken your freedom away from them? Heroin, shooting, and watching the blood come into the syringe, talking about madness that never comes back, holes where they put the drugs. And it's dated 5/12/1980. Love you, Harry. Love you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jack. Next up, we have Amelie Frank. Amelie.
Thank you so much, Quentin, and thank you, Beyond Baroque. Happy Saturday, community. I want to say thank you to Susan and SA for inviting me to join in celebrating Harry today and among such astonishingly talented poets. It's an honor to be here. And Harry, greetings from the Van Nuys House of Poets. Lynn, James, and I send you our love. And I hope you know, Harry, that in some of the most important years of my becoming a poet in this community, your work and Holly's was crucial in helping me to develop my voice. And here are two of your pieces. And this is from Reunions, I think, Joyful. You can't see it either way, but this is from Reunions. It's me alone with 2 cats. My wife gone to read poems to Jack Gilbert. When I leave home, sometimes I feel empty. My friend calls. Mamie's Southern style home cooking, Spalvita and Olympic, we ate there last night. You gotta go there. Fried chicken and homemade macaroni and cheese. I want to get the smothered chicken one night. Israeli PR Rabin assassinated extreme right Jewish young man. And the time gone, and I feel like a reservation, gone, empty, irresolute, corrupt word. It is like a tiger that has no skyline parallel to the mountain. A river under the light bulb, the food, then the majesty. I want to bathe. Friend gone and has not the transcending love I dreamed he had. The cup and the 2 tips, one upside down like nipples, breasts, coming close but not touching. The top one recedes. Early memory recedes. I hold my God, an airplane in the sky, even its exhaust, fallen horizontal. The earth, a revolving, steps down, fire of their wings through the oval blue. Hold on, the card fell out where I had the poem marked. Here it is. Oh, Holly. Oh, Holly. Do you think I'll ever amount to a hill of beans? You're a great big hill of beans. Thank you. Thank you, Harry.
And thank you, Amelie. It was wonderful. Next up, we have Jeanette Clough. Jeanette, go ahead and join us.
Okay, oops. Come on. I have a habit of double clicking, and I guess I turn myself off automatically after I turn myself on. Oh, this is such a great group. I'm happy to be part of this celebration. And there's advantages to doing Zoom, and there's different advantages to doing something in person. And I must say, if this were going on in person, we'd have had a heck of a party. I first met Harry in 1997 when I was 10. No. And I was part of a stand-up reading series called the Hyperpoet Stand-Up. Oh boy, I was part of a startup reading series called the Hyperpoets. The very first feature we invited to read were the Cahuenga poets, of which, of course, Harry was a member. And they said yes. We were surprised when anyone said yes, and thus launched the Hyper Poets on firm footing with Harry, Holly, Phoebe, and Jim in the back room of a secondhand video and record shop in Venice. Harry Northup, unfailingly gracious, welcoming, upbeat, happy, a snappy dresser, inquisitive, an adept interviewer. I'm always impressed with the probing questions he asks poets as part of his weekly program, Organized Chaos. Energetic. Not only does he have a weekly closed circuit TV show, there's his blog, times 3. And there's many things you can read about on there. And you can also find a link to his weekly TV show if you want to watch it. And prolific. 12 books of poetry and going. And of course, an impressive acting career. I would like to read one of Harry's poems. It's also from East Hollywood Memorial to Reason. And this poem is called Community. Communitas, McGrath's main theme in his letter to an imaginary friend. Doesn't matter if I tell you there is community in the theater. In films I've worked in for Scorsese, Demi, Kaplan, these are the ones I've felt most keenly. In Corsaro's acting class, in Cahuenga Press. We've been together since 1989 and are getting ready to publish our 20th poetry book. There were periods when a bunch of us poets read the long poems, the cantos, Patterson, the Odyssey, Hermetic Definition, the Bridge, a song of myself. Beyond Baroque, Momentum Press, community present and past. Community is essential. The individual does the work, goes inward, goes outward. The community in film, American Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Executive Committee. This year we saw 51 student short films, under 40 minutes, from 29 countries. Community in dark theater watching a movie, in giving an ear to each poet in his or her right. Women's Building, Watts Writers Workshop. Community in my heart, for Holly Prado, Phoebe McAdams, Jim Cushing, Harvey Kubernick, Ron Silliman, Dan Wachowski, Vincent Labruto, the late Don Sherman, David Lloyd Glover, my family, those who will have me. Thank you, and thank you, Holly. Thank you, Harry, for being the wonderful poet and human being you are.
Thank you, Jeanette. I think I might say so. I think Holly is very much with us in spirit as well today. But next up, we have one of the folks name checked in that last poem, Phoebe McAdams. Phoebe, please join us.
Thank you, Quentin, and thank you, SA, so much, and thank you, Susan. I met Holly and Harry in Ojai in 1984 when I was living there. My friend Judy Oberlander introduced us, and when I moved to Los Angeles in 1986, we became good friends. Harry has brought the gifts of poetry into my life. He organized the reading series Poetry on Melrose at Gasoline Alley from 1986 to 88. And after I moved to LA, he asked Bill Moore and me if we would like to take it over. That is how I met many Los Angeles poets, thanks to Harry and to Bill. In 1989, Harry had an idea to start a press. And from that idea came Cahuenga Press. Originally, it was me, Holly, Harry, Bill, Cecilia Wallach, and Jim Cushing. Cahuenga Press became my poetry family. We read and shared poems and ate meals together. Cecilia and Bill moved on to other things, but Harry, Holly, Jim, and I kept going. And after Holly passed away in 2019, we asked Jeanette Clough to join us, and Cahuenga Press is now in its 34th year. Harry's unfailing support and praise for my poems has meant the world to me. It has fed my creative life and given me confidence and belief in my poetry. And here's a little chant for Harry. Harry, I love your passion for poetry. I love that you read your favorite poets aloud over and over. I love talking to you about Harry's Poetry Hour. We often debrief after, and I love your generosity towards all your readers. I love hearing about your walks around MPTF and the photos you take of flowers. I love that you made sure Holly had flowers every day. I love that you call me up to tell jokes. I love that when you call, you often say, do you have a few minutes? I always have minutes for you, Harry. I love your incredibly well-organized events. We always know exactly what we are reading and the time we'll be reading, down to the minute. I love your lists. I always check your movie lists, and I love talking to you about films. I love all our conversations, and I love the care you take with your life. And I love the care you took of Holly, your kindness, your unfailing service to her. I loved how in the early morning when you and Holly were living with us, you would come in while I was having my coffee and launch into a lecture about the poets of Los Angeles and the importance of studying the tradition. I love that you study the tradition. I study it more now, too. I love your presence in my life, Harry. It is one of the great blessings of my existence. And your poems, I love them. And I'd like to I'm going to read a poem by Holly. And this is a little picture of Holly and Harry's domestic life from Poems for Harry, 2002, April. You're making your famous cheeseburgers tonight. You went to farmer's market and bought the exactly right amount of special ground beef you always get, and soon we'll eat. Whoever's at Burger King 3 blocks away would rush to our house if they understood that food's not just any brown stuff on a bun. It's driving to the market, attention paid to weight, freshness, taste. When your son was young, you made his salads with such care. Lettuce in a roomy bowl, cucumbers, tomato, inevitably blue cheese dressing, the only kind he liked. When you fixed peanut butter with Ritz crackers, every cracker had its own spot on a plate delivered as your boy watched afternoon TV, waited for the dinner you would cook. We never ate bad pizza from a cardboard box. In time, your son himself and I made pizza. He patted out the dough and I made the sauce. As I remember this, I get weepy, but come on. I'm talking about cheeseburgers and pizza. No, I'm thinking about my mother, her April birthday. Your mother, too. I know you miss her. I hear you now out in the kitchen, the hamburger in your hands, slap, slap, meat between your palms, becoming patties. You can't find the garlic powder, a ritual ingredient, but then you do. In our small kitchen, the mothers send their spirit hands to move our own. What I can do in memory of everything is eat. Nourish our past with this new April's food, your perfect cheeseburgers, served with freshly picked asparagus. Shall I feed the cats, you ask me, when you finished up the patties? Of course I answer yes. Harry, you feed us all. We're hungry and we're yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. That was beautiful. Next up, we have Aram Soroyan. Aram, if you could join us.
Okay, here. Am I on?
You're on.
Okay, great. Because all I see Well, I guess I don't need to see me. Um, you know, a little over a year ago, I moved from LA down to Orange County. And thinking about Harry, I had this little spectrum of what happened during those years that I was in LA with my late wife, Galen, and our connection with Harry and Holly, which in retrospect was very special. You know, we saw each other a lot, often around having food and or going to movies. And then later on, Harry and I, both having lost our partners, would talk on the phone and also occasionally go to a movie together. All of it was, in retrospect, I realized that they were one of the closest couples we ever knew. Having dinner at Holly and Harry's was extraordinary. We'd always talk about writing poetry, not just poetry, but pretty much anything any of us were reading. And just that relationship was so special. You almost don't realize it while it's going on. But that's one of the things I think about when I think about Harry. Another thing was that they, as a married couple, they were so exemplary. I mean, really in a romantic way, as well as many other ways. Both of them from Nebraska, Harry from a small town, and Holly, I think, from Omaha. I'm not sure. But they met, I gather, here in LA around the poetry scene based at Beyond Baroque. And then I got to know Holly in the writing program at USC, where she was this revered teacher. And the sense I got from her right away was this quiet spoken authority that I immediately trusted. And Harry had something like the same quality. I was scrolling around on the internet yesterday, and I found him at some kind of award ceremony talking. And it was interesting because he started out slowly and tentatively, and then it was like he caught the wind in his sail, and he went into what really struck me as a kind of poem. And I don't know whether that's the way you write, Harry, or not, but it rang true, and it meant a lot to just see it in action. And of course, you're an actor, so you've got that going for you as well. And it's interesting to know someone who's into two art forms simultaneously, because I think they can feed each other and they can nurture each other. Having moved, I really don't have my library. I did have some poems from Harry that I thought I'd read, but I see that they're being read. So I'm happy to let it go at this point. Let me just see if, well, really what people seem to be talking about, everybody has really noted it. And I think it's true. You know, this whole struggle, it's like, I've lived long enough to see it as just endless, has been between this sort of hierarchical place we're all in on the planet, which is really not good, and the communal spirit that so permeates the scene right here today. and which Harry is so fundamental a part. I mean, the generosity of just his openness and what he modeled for me and Galen with Holly as a couple, which is one of the great gifts of my lifetime, and I dare say of Galen's. So thank you, Harry. I love you, buddy. Thanks.
Thank you, Aram. That was beautifully put. Next up, we have Courtney Bailey. Courtney, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi. I don't know if it's okay to ask, and it's fine. Oh, you did it. I just wanted to see your face for 1 second here. All right. I'm gonna do my note to you. This is lovely. This is really lovely. And I'm actually here with my kids right now, and they're not listening, but he's been a huge influence. So I'm gonna read what I wrote about Harry. And everyone's been very very thoughtful, and I don't do well with jokes, but I might start with a little tiny one. But I did want to write a poem for Harry, and I was thinking it would be great to call it My Harry. And then I thought, wow, that could be like in many different directions. So I hear your virtual laughs, but truly, this is a very special moment for me. He is a very special person to my life, and I don't quite feel that I'm a part of this group, but I'm very honored to be here, and thank you to everyone for putting this together for a man who I know is also not accepting this because he's so humble, but deserves all of it. Many of you have read or are reading poems of his. I'm not going to do that today, but I wanted to start with a bit of background. I started this job nearly 5 years ago. I work for Bob Beecher. I work with Jen Clymer. I was a part of UCLA and other nonprofits. I've never been a part of a place more special, and a huge part of that is the people that make up MPTF, where Harry lives. And I didn't get a chance to meet Holly, which I speak about, but I just found out that this organization, why it's so special, it's because the people that make it so special. And many people have touched my life, but Harry's at the top of my list. And I first got to know Harry about his story, secondhand, of how he came to campus. And then I got to meet him. And since then, I've not only met him, but I've hugged him many times. I hug him every time I see him. And I've been a part of his show, which has brought joy to so many. And he is an absolute light anytime I see him. He has brightened my day in the most beautiful ways. He's encouraged a love of poetry amongst my oldest daughter, who's 9 years old, by the way, who did read an Amanda Gorman poem that she was working on for her school. And she got to read it on Harry's poetry hour. And Harry was so kind. She was very nervous. And it was something she was going to read in front of her class. But we got the beautiful platform to put it on Harry's poetry hour. And I think that was a little bit during the pandemic. But he also, I'm an English major. He reignited a spark of poetry in me. And I don't think that would have happened, because why in life would we stop unless we have the moments and the time to do so? But Harry did that for me. And it will never end. And it's because of Harry. I look forward to seeing Harry at work, and thankfully, the universe brings that to me often. I look forward to any time I'm on a show, any days where I see his gorgeous turquoise blue LA hat. Harry, you know the one. Sometimes it's yellow. I love you for that. Maybe we think it's UCLA colors. You probably don't, but I love it on your face. To say that I adore you is an understatement. When I heard that he was being honored, I questioned why I would be a part of it, because I know so many people have been touched by him, but here I am, and I'm so happy to be here. By the way, I'm here slightly out of town, at least out of county, to celebrate my father's 79th birthday, and nobody would take me away from any moment of this day but Harry Northup. He's a phenomenal human being, and there's, you know, he's just incredible. What I want Harry to know is just how much I adore and respect him and how he has affected my life and my family's life. I talk about him a lot to a lot of people. He's going to be somebody that I will always think about on the daily, and I cannot wait for our next meetup, Harry, our hugs, the handwritten notes that you've given me, and the way that you are always so generous with your heart, and how wonderful you are with my kids and with the people clearly around you. This is really, really special. So I'm just very happy to be here. And thank you, Susan, and everyone else. This is, I wish this was in person, but I am a fan of yours always, and you have my heart always.
Thank you, Courtney. That was a beautiful tribute to Harry.
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful. Next up, we have Beth Ruscio. Beth, go for it.
Okie dokie. Okay, here I am. I wanted to say to Courtney, you're actually going to get cited in this tribute I'm reading to Harry, because it started as a fan letter to Harry about his show. I loved watching it so much, and now I'm addicted to watching it. I feel achy and out of sorts if I miss an episode. I saw the episode, Courtney, with your daughter when she read the Amanda Gorman poem. It was so amazing. It was wonderful. So I'm going to read excerpts. This fan letter I wrote grew into a correspondence between me and Harry, and I've written him a lot about shows and poetry stuff, and it's a wonderful correspondence. I couldn't really cover all of it here, but I have 5 minutes worth, I hope. This first letter is from August 27th, 2021, on the death of Jack Hirschman. They re-aired his last reading, which was April 9th of 2021. Dear Harry, I saw that reading with Michael C. Ford and Jack Hirschman the first time. It was a revelation. I got a real appreciation for his whole New York, I love it, I hate it sensibility. I remember his glasses taped together at the temple with blue tape, the fervor in his voice, how spectacular that you could honor him. Perhaps it's his last public reading? What an archive you are building. How lucky the poetry community is to have your offerings. Dear Beth, when I heard of Jack Hirschman's death, I was saddened, but then I saw an ascension. I think the work that Jack Hirschman did for all of us was inspiring, and I just saw an upward movement, not visible. Yes, Harry, someone like Jack, inspirational in so many ways, and not a small thing. His valiance in dealing with those damn glasses falling apart, and yet he didn't miss a beat. A man in a gale leaning into the wind, pressing forward because he was going to read his poems. His life depended on it. Very much moved me. February 8th, 2022, impending Russian invasion of Ukraine. Dear Harry, as Corinne was saying, it's such a puzzle that we are confronted with this monolithic Russia in the news. And then there is all this greatness in their literature. The poets you read today were very much at the mercy of the worst Russia had to offer. But were it not for their formidable constitutions, their wit, and as Tony was saying, their self-determination and passion, we might never know them. Your set highlights that the times and perils of their era foisted a tender solidarity on these writers. You can feel it in these urgent poems, Mayakovsky in the year 1913 to Osip Mandelstam, elegies they wrote for each other and passed around like contraband. Dear Beth, thank you for your perceptive writing about the show today. Those women are great readers. I deeply appreciate your support. Dear Harry, yes, you can tell Corinne, Helen, Kay, and Tony, I'm their biggest fan. I've seen them blossom. It's nurtured them and us to watch it. How grand that you offer them this wealth. June 20th, 2023, the tribute for dear Tony Sawyer. Dear Harry, how superb. What a joy to spend a whole hour with Tony. She always presented as so invested in whatever she was reading, really inhabiting the poet's voice, as Corinne said, as though she wrote the poems herself. A consummate actor, she gave herself over so seamlessly to another's creation that she became more than a mouthpiece, a clear channel, the soul, the music of this imagined voice. Sublime to be in her presence, rustling papers and all. Also, how elegant she was, and very, very hard to believe she was 94. And for that matter, that goes for Corinne and Helen and you, of course, and their company being the Spring Chicken. Dear Beth, your letter astonishes me and reaffirms the work I do, which I love, which keeps me alive. Your letters are a book between you and me. You see so much. Dear Harry, I think the work you do is so much more than what we see in the broadcast. Your great questions, you're always so present. You let the work affect you. And for people not used to being in the company of poets, you bring such warmth and good humor to these questions. I think you've allowed poets to shine as conversationalists. August 29th, 2023. Dear Harry, when Corinne chose poems from Ada Limon and Amy Clampett, both of whose poems she read and became acquainted with on the Poetry Hour, when Courtney said, "You're a gorgeous light, Harry," after she talked about her daughter's exposure to poetry, helping them blossom, I thought, mission accomplished. I bet this is beyond Harry's wildest imagination for what a show like this could mean to people. You're the beneficent Pied Piper of poetry. No false promises, only the real thing. Hope, beauty, community. Dear Beth, your email came through at just the right time and with your affectionate insights. Holly and I would be driving home and she would say, "You did good, Harry." She's gone. I appreciate your writing. Brando, when asked about who was the best director he worked with, said, Kazan. It gets lonely out there in front of the camera. He had the ability to share that loneliness with you. Dear Harry, I'll say it for Holly. You done good, Harry. It's had an impact that you can see out here in the poetry community, and for the people on the show, it's been a weekly confirmation of the necessary place for poetry. It honors the frailties of us mere humans and fills up our souls. Before we all go off half-cocked, wouldn't the world be a better place if on a regular basis we were in the presence of mindfully chosen groups of words like, "I've measured my life in coffee spoons," or "She who reconciles the ill-matched threads of her life and weaves them gratefully into a single cloth"? I mean, come on. Isn't that the world we want to make for ourselves? Yes, I say, yes. Thank you, Harry. I know you're Midwestern and how you can only take so much praise because shucks, aren't we all just doing the best that we can? So I'll I'll hold off for now. But one last thing. What you said today, a sense of sacred time for all of us, a sense of communion, I think that's right. And boy, is it ever. Thank you, Harry. Congratulations.
And thank you, Beth. Really, really wonderful. Next up, we have Bob Beecher. Bob, please join us.
Thank you. I think we all need to take a deep breath after that, Beth. That was a remarkable conversation with Harry. And I think so much of what you said, we all share. So thank you for that. As all that have preceded me today, thank you, Quentin and Beyond Baroque and Susan and Essay. What an amazing tribute so far for a deserving champion of poetry. There's a parlor game that my kids used to play with their friends when they were younger. Maybe you've used it as well as a conversation breaker. If you were an animal and not a person, what kind of animal would you be? Don't worry, I'm not going to ask the same question of all of you today, though it would probably be a lot of fun to hear your answers. But instead, take poetic license, since I'm in a Zoom full of poets, and use the same idea in a different way. The other day, I was asking myself, if Harry Northup was a poetic form, what would he be? Not a sonnet. No, definitely not. I know he loves the great ones, but Harry couldn't be contained to a fixed number of lines or to a rhyming scheme. Too much structure, at least in the form of expression he loves best. Not a lullaby either. Harry is never going to put us to sleep with his poetry, or for that matter, in any of his activities around the promotion of poetry. He's trying to awaken us to the beauty of the world, to the use of language to create wonder and beauty and depth of feeling. Not a nocturne either. The tradition of associating night with spiritual contemplation goes back a long way. But for Harry, I don't think it matters whether it's day or night or any time in between. His poetry and his life sing of all day parts and contemplation of all matters, not just spiritual, although the spiritual is definitely at the core of the man and his work. What about an elegy? Could that describe Harry? Loss and consolation, again, are part of what Harry takes up in his poetry from time to time. And certainly his loss of Holly took him down that road in poetry and life, but Harry is much, much more than elegy. He laments, sure, we all do, but he is open to joy, happiness, delight, and the sublime in his life and poetry. Again, it partly describes Harry, but doesn't capture the essence. No, I think the life of Harry Northup as actor, poet, champion of poetry, and friend to so many is the epic form. A man who, for so many of us, is exalted in style, elegant, as some have already said, and heroic in a modern way. No, to my knowledge, Harry didn't journey back from the Trojan War like Odysseus, or any other war for that matter, to reclaim his family and land, although we all know he would have done that for Holly. He didn't fight to save his world or his civilization like Gilgamesh. He didn't travel through hell like Dante or retell the story of Adam and Eve like Milton. But the epic quality of Harry is that he and his poetry carry the cultural truth of all epics, carry on the tradition, as many have said, so important to Harry. His poetry is complex and transcends the ordinary while celebrating it at the same time. Borges once said that the epic is one of the necessities of the human mind, and Harry is one of the necessities of keeping poetry alive, practiced with communal joy, shared with enthusiasm and appreciation. He is the warrior who fights against the lack of imagination the decay of poetic language, the reduction of our experience to just prose. Well, I know many of you are reading Harry's poetry today. I'll end my little piece here with another pretty good poet, a guy named Shakespeare, who in King Lear says, "Men must endure their going hence, even as they're coming hither. Ripeness is all." In his ripeness, Harry is savoring life, not rushing it, letting it lie on his palate, lie on his tongue, run from the corners of his mouth. Harry's ripeness is one we should all be so lucky to achieve. Harry, love you. So grateful that you're part of our community. So grateful for your friendship and support, and for your amazing poetry hour and everything you've done for this community of poets. Thank you.
And thank you, Bob. Thanks so much for being here to pay tribute to Harry. That was truly beautiful. Next up, we have Jennifer Clymer. Jennifer, if you want to join us.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for including me in this tribute. And Beth, thank you for all of those kind words about Harry's Poetry Hour. For those of you that aren't familiar, I get the opportunity to work with Harry every week. I work at MPTF and I help to run the closed circuit TV station. When the pandemic started and we were in lockdown, we started a live interactive television show, and it's a variety show. And part of that variety was turning to Harry and saying, how about some poetry performances? And that's how it sparked. And we are 170 programs into it now. So if you haven't seen them and are interested, you can find it on the MPTF YouTube page, and go to mptf.com to learn more about the charity that is part of the retirement community that Harry lives at. Okay, so my first encounter with Harry actually predates me meeting him. My better half would go to the Silver Spoon quite often. So Edgar got the opportunity to know Harry. And then when Harry and Holly moved on to the MPTF campus and Edgar found out that they were there, Edgar bent my ear quite a bit and said, you've got to get to know these people. They are amazing. And he's not wrong. Harry, you have such a special place in my heart. I thank you for all of the art and the beauty and the language that you give us opportunity to pause an hour a week and just luxuriate in. I'm honored to have been asked a few times to read for the Poetry Hour, but also to sing for the Poetry Hour. And as I was thinking of the best way I could offer a gift to honor Harry, I thought maybe I could give you a song. There's a song that I have loved since I was a child. And when I was thinking about who Harry personifies to me, he is a gentle man. He is a curious man. He is at home with nature. And I see him on his regular walks around campus, admiring the beautiful landscaping that we have and trying to get his mind around the names of all of the trees, which is quite a task, because there are, as a resident recently counted, over 900 trees on the campus. So as I was thinking about who Harry is in my point of view, this song came to mind. So if you will indulge me. On the day I was born, said my father, said he, I've an elegant legacy waiting for ye. 'Tis a rhyme for your lips and a song for your heart, to sing it whenever your world falls apart. Look, look, look to the rainbow, follow it over the hills and streams. Look, look, Look to the rainbow, follow the fellow who follows a dream. 'Twas a sumptuous gift to bequeath to a child. Oh, the lore of that song kept her feet running wild. For you ne'er grow old, and you ne'er stand still, with a whippoorwill singing beyond the next hill. So I bundled me heart and I roamed the world free, to the east of the lark, to the west with the sea. And I searched all the earth, and I scanned all the skies, and found it at last in Harry Northup's eyes. Look, look, look to the rainbow, follow it over the hills and streams. Look, look, look to the rainbow, follow the fellow who follows a dream. Follow the fellow, follow the fellow, follow the fellow who follows a dream. We love you, Harry.
Thank you, Jennifer. How wonderful to have some singing as well. That was lovely. Next up, we have Corinne Conley. Corinne, please go ahead and join us.
There I am. I wish Jen could keep singing. It says I'm muted. Everybody's been doing this perfectly. I don't think I'm muted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, well then I get out of here. Why is it saying I'm muted? Thank you, Beth. Beth, for saying all those lovely things about Harry's readers, because I can tell you that we here at MPTF are just so thrilled to be the chosen ones to get to read for Harry. And we've learned so much about poetry. And also, you know, we're all very grateful that Harry and his wife, Holly, have written such beautiful poetry about the motion picture home that we feel that we will be immortalized, because I think that's what poetry does. You know, right on our campus, we have our own house of worship. And as you know, Harry walks around a lot and reports on what's going on. And he wrote a wonderful poem about this chapel, excuse me. And I'd like to read it to you. The poem is posted inside the chapel as well. The John Ford Chapel by Harry Northup. No roses on bushes outside chapel. A simple, almost New England place. 3 stained glass windows, floor to ceiling. 10 wooden pews with long beige pillows tied at one end. Blue carpet. A place to pray. I pray for continuity, breath, line, devotion. I pray for understanding, to learn to forgive those hungry, ambitious souls who see not others. I pray for the health of my neighbors. I give thanks for their generous spirits. I pray to be a good person and not offend others. I pray to departed love, and the chapel bells startle me 11 times. I ask to recognize times, to see others in a more human array. I pray for forgiveness for my limited vision. I pray to see the white wings in sunshine, which hold death and love. And here's a poem that Harry wrote about his mother. It tells a lot about Harry, too. It's called Lincoln Highway. My wild Irish rose, the sweetest flower that grows. You can search anywhere, but none can compare with my wild Irish rose. My mother's favorite song, along with Easter Parade. She wrote me letters, so I saved 209 pages from 1966 till 1970 when she died. She ended letters with, "Please excuse the mistakes. All my love, Mother." Lincoln Highway, the coast to coast highway. Gather her children. Gather Georgie from Virginia, her firstborn, the hero, the chief radio man, FBI agent. Gather Bobby, her secondborn, the Presbyterian minister, missionary, the straight A student. Gather Dorothy from her farm in Ohio. Dorothy with her white teeth and joyful smile, a beauty queen, housewife, mother, and church worker. Dorothy, who memorized a sermon she wrote, who waited for the Sunday when the minister got sick. Dorothy, who gave her sermon. Gather Jim, who is and is a big success, who is like his daddy and has mother's heart. Gather Harry from East Hollywood, who is like his mother in heart and worry. Gather Sunday midday dinners, roast beef and mashed potatoes and gravy, fried chicken. Gather hard work and family, ironing board and wash tub. Gather flower printed dresses in the closet. Gather work all day at the post office, drive 12 miles home, cook dinner, do dishes, iron clothes. Gather driving 12 miles to the Fox Theater. Gather driving the Lincoln Highway with Georgie and Jim and Harry in the panhandle of misery, lost. You had a good mother, Harry. You're a lot like her, Margaret, Georgie's wife, said. Thank you, Harry. We all love you here, and you know that.
Thank you so much, Corrine. Next up, we have the man on the bill with Harry that George shared back in 1974, Michael C. Ford. Go for it, Michael.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, Jennifer, thank you so much for that music. You were absolutely celestial. And David, it's good to see you, man. I haven't seen you since the Silver Spoon got altered into what, a chicken on fire restaurant? It's something awful. Why do all the good things go away? I'm still trying to figure that out. Well, here we are. Zoom, zoom. Modern technology lives, everybody. Could I briefly do a little history here? I had only done one public reading of my work. It was a fundraiser at the Cinematheque 16 on Sunset Boulevard in June of 1969. And for whatever fortunate reason for me, co-directors of the Wednesday Night Venice Poetry Workshop, Joe Hansen and John Harris, invited me to be in recital at Beyond Baroque, middle of 1973, I think it was. So after 3.5 years of enforced anonymity, I get this generous invitation to open for one of the alarmingly munificent LA voices, Harry E. Northup. Of course, we've discovered, I published him in the Sunset Palms Hotel magazine, and of course we discovered mutual affinity with all literary connections. I won't bother to enumerate them now, but it's sufficient to say that following that dual recital, we became instant amigos, and enjoying to when I was informally co-editing and publishing a cutting-edge literary magazine titled The Sunset Palms Hotel. Let me point out that my imprimatur was on the magazine, but it was really Rick Merlin who financed it, typeset it, designed the graphics. In other words, essentially actualized it as a viable publication. So very soon following our reading, Harry gave me his most recent manuscript entitled The John Voight Poems. I immediately read it. I showed it to Merlin. And I said, we gotta do this one. We gotta, it's gonna be a classic. And Merlin said, yeah, I'll help you create this for Harry. And he in turn contacted a painter friend of his named Ivy Lake to create the cover art. And I conferred with her saying, you know, John Voight is this movie guy, and I think his name should be in lights, you know, on a like light bulbs surrounding a marquee. Well, she really swung, and putting his first name in like GE light bulbs and his last name also, this is what it looked like. Yeah, John Voight's name literally in lights. And that's, it became a document of poetry and with Harry's name on it. And even to this day, paying tribute and celebrating his continuing life as an American artist, both in literature and film culture, I will also continue to value Harry's gifts to me of comradeship and brotherhood. And I'll finish my measure of recognition here. It seems appropriate to read one of Harry's iconic poems from the John Voight poems. And the title is From the Wings with Akim. Now the wings are the stage left and stage right wings of the Moscow Arts Theater. And the body copy goes like this. Anatole calls my son Robinson Crusoe. He invites us into his one-room apartment, books, Beethoven, a new hat. He shows me leaves of grass in Russian. Anatole, will you play Ferapont? I ask. I'm too old to be in a play. Besides, I hate strangers. Americans want everyone to participate. In Russia, I was in the audience. Look, the lower depths. I watched from the wings with Akim. Stanislavski played the Baron. Isn't that right, Robinson? I saw the original Three Sisters. Met them all, but Stanislavski. They followed me to New York. Wine, Olga Chekhov, a new record. When I get angry, I destroy books. I had a book on Lenin, and every page had Stalin's picture, falsifying. I burnt that book. Tennis shoes, Pushkin, a used samovar. At the door, Anatole holds the naked communist. It's not what your enemy feels, it's what he knows. Hey, where's Robinson? Harry E. Northup. I thank you, Harry, for your life, and I am out of here.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure as always to have you with us. Next up, we have Beyond Baroque's Executive Director Emeritus, Richard Modiano. Richard, please join us.
Thank you, Quentin. Well, I'm going to reveal a shocking detail about Harry that you may not know. Once upon a time, millions, literally millions of teenage girls hated Harry's guts. Why? Because he played a character called Sergeant Doberman in a movie called Over the Edge. And he killed young Matt Dillon in that movie, right at the peak of Matt's fame. So that just shows you his versatility as an actor. I mean, because the real Harry is a warm and generous person. He has always treated me with, well, Michael C. Ford said, comrade. Well, he's treated me with comradely respect, and for that I am very grateful to him. And in fact, actually, before I met Harry in person, I saw him first in Boxcar Bertha, where he plays a nasty, racist deputy sheriff. And then what really stuck out was his performance in Mean Streets, where he plays a returning Vietnam vet who flips out at his welcome home party in a bar. And his versatility as an actor is extraordinary in these roles that I've just mentioned. And really, it's like, I remember we had a conversation one time, and he was going to be talking about his acting career at Beyond Baroque as part of the program. And he was saying, I played this, they were going to show a clip of him as the racist deputy sheriff. And he was saying, of course, that's totally unlike me. And I said, yeah, of course, I know that, Harry. And he said, but I wonder if people can make that separation. And I said, well, it's interesting that Peter Lorre, a Jewish refugee actor, specialized in playing Nazis in Hollywood World War II films. And Harry sort of picked up on that, says, yeah, you're right. You can, that's a fact that really will make it easier for me. I'm going to use that. But as a poet, Harry also has a tremendous range, as we've seen from everybody that has read poems here this afternoon. And he is really a terrific poet, a poet who really knows his craft. Jack Skelly talked about that earlier. And I'm going to read something in a moment that will show you just what a superb craftsman he is. And, what I admire about Harry as a human being is his warmth and his generosity, and especially his resilience. As many of you know, he and Holly lived through the destruction of their East Hollywood apartment. And then Harry lost Holly, his life partner and soulmate, which two sort of blows like that could very easily turn a person to bitterness, to despair, and to hatred of life. And Harry lived through that, and it takes somebody with heart and sensitivity and courage to come back from that. And I know especially the loss of Holly is an open wound. Anybody that has lost a life companion, a virtual soulmate, has that ache always, at all times. But Harry goes on, and his warmth and generosity, I think that feeds his warmth and generosity. I mean, he has compassion, and of course, the literal meaning of compassion is to suffer with others. And he has that ability. So he has empathy and compassion, and it shows in his poems, and it shows in the roles that he played. I mean, probably his most famous that bad guy, and in fact, in cinephile annals, his Sergeant Doberman from Over the Edge is one of the classic villains. And he could only play that part with the conviction that he brought to it because of his empathy for people that are really like that, like the character that he played. So, and also I would add that I think Harry is a comrade. To me, he's been a comrade. He's been very encouraging. From time to time, I share poems with him, and his response is always warm. And when something needs a little bit of tweaking, he's the guy that can tell you how to tweak it without getting your back up. So, Harry, you're a wonderful guy. I will say from the bottom of my heart, I want to be like you. I wish I was more like you, but I'm not. But in this poem that I'm going to read, Harry has what pounded this taxonomy of poetry, where he talked about the ideas, the image, and the music. And the ideas are embodied in the images, and the music carries the images. So, Nightlight. What is life but a home and a wife? What is a home but a son and a book? What is a book but a poem and a picture? What is a friend but one who helps? What is a friend but a window and a door? What door looks within? What window takes one away from looking within? What is a wife but a window within? What is a night but a place to write? What is a writer and one who looks within? What is within but a place to be alone? Be alone with words with little light. To be in little light and still see words. What are a home? Words are a home. Words create a home with light within. A light that does not gossip. A word within light bestows home. What is a home without light? What is light without words? What words within bring peace? What is a home but light and love? Thank you, Harry. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Richard. That was wonderful. Harry, as an encore to this tribute, we might have invite folks, all those teen girls from the 80s who were mad about you killing Matt Dillon, to maybe come and complain about how you ruined their adolescence. But next up, we have Susan Hayden. Just as a note to all of our other readers, Celeste Goyer and Jim Cushing are running a little late, so we're going to fit them in a little bit later in the program. So Susan, if you want to join us, go for it.
Hi. Let's see. Some of you have already heard this story, and I apologize for that, but how I came to find and meet and be friends with Harry was, I was a wannabe fledgling actress in my early 20s. And I was, my then boyfriend and I moved to Westbourne Drive, where the old Bodhi Tree bookstore and used bookstore were. And I would go to the used bookstore there to get the Sam French plays that were $5 at Samuel French, but they were 25 cents at the Bodhi Tree. And I was really at the end of my rope with nothing happening for me and feeling like I didn't know what my path was going to be, and very depressed that night that I went there and sat on the bench. And so I decided to move to the poetry section. And I sat and stared at the books, and I'd already been writing and for a long time, and wanted to be a poet. And I was sitting there thinking about, how awful my life was, when this book literally fell from this shelf onto my lap. And it was The Streets Inside 10 Los Angeles Poets. And I opened the book, and there was Harry. And I fell in love with his words, because I feel like he makes language and emotion so accessible. I often feel pushed away by certain kinds of poets and poetry. And I felt like his words just pulled me in. And it turned out that he and my then boyfriend had worked as waiters and actors in New York. And they were old friends. And I was reading these poems to this boyfriend of mine. And I said, I have to find him. And I went to the LA Weekly and found that he was doing a reading that weekend at Beyond Baroque. And I introduced myself, and that was that. He, like I said at the beginning of this event, he was my welcome mat. And he introduced me to Holly. And it turns out that Holly used to study with Jeff Corey, who was my then acting teacher. And she was saying to me, but then my creative life went in another direction. And I remember thinking, I can't even imagine really giving up trying to be an actress and really giving myself over to writing. But Harry was the first step in that. He gave me my first reading, my first featured reading at Gasoline Alley. He's been such a true friend and a constant for me and for all of us. And so, Harry, you know how I feel about you. I just want to say that I am indebted to you. There wouldn't be a Library Girl without a Gasoline Alley and without your show at Gasoline Alley for me. And I'm going to read a piece called She Brought Gardens into Our Home from Harry's Reunions book. I belong to the bugs in the sink, the ants on the honey jar, in the tub, the bug on my Frank O'Hara bio. I belong to Vermont Avenue from LACC to Franklin Avenue, to Skylight Books and the Los Feliz Theater, though I prefer it before it was cut into 3. I belong to the movies of Scorsese, Who's That Knocking at My Door, Boxcar Bertha, Mean Streets, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Taxi Driver, New York, New York. I belong to Williams Patterson. I've read it over 50 times and will continue to read it till I'm dead. I belong to the Academy, Nebraska State Teachers College at Kearney, Santa Monica City College, and CSUN. I belong to the prostitute's blood on Mariposa, shot by a plainclothes cop as she attempted to drive his car away. I belong to lyric, epic, gossip, the imagists, and stone, grass, pier, car, TV, cafe. I belong to the body of my wife, beautiful and holy as the observatory straight north slightly. I belong to death, sidewalk, and tree. I belong to sun, who proposes to woman in Wisconsin, who asks him to be her soulmate. Both in a jacuzzi, both say yes, in a Holiday Inn Express, in the strawberries covered with chocolate they put in each other's mouth. I belong to breath and projected light. I belong to the films of Demme and Kaplan. I belong to their answering my letters. I belong to the actors who hang out at cafes. I belong to Farmer's Market and the Silver Spoon. I belong to Beyond Baroque and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I belong to my 3 brothers and sister. I belong to Cahuenga Press. I belong to Horse and Cat and Taxi. I belong to Amarillo, and I belong to Screen Actors Guild. I belong to the ants under the wood and to the gas that is left on. And I belong to the golden moon surfers see by at night, and I am bone, and I am sand. I belong to listening and hearing. I belong to door and cat and wife and home light. The wetness of words shakes memory. A line across time bears witness. I belong. Thank you, Harry, for helping me to learn how to belong. I love you so much.
Thank you so much, Susan. Next up, we have Holiday Mason. Holiday, go ahead and join us.
So moving. Oh, I got an airplane. Well, one thing I have to say is thank you, Harry. And everybody has really said it. Richard, the talking about the resurrection after so many losses. Susan, you read a list poem, and I have a list of things that represent you, Harry, to me, but I have to shut this door. So can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Humble, courteous, courageous, serious, kind, rigorous, vulnerable, truthful. You know, Holly was a beacon for me. I keep a postcard that she sent me, many letters, and it says, you know, it's a thank you for the companionship in the work of poetry. And Harry and Holly taught me about how to be married, how to be truthful, how to be reverent about pretty much everything. And there are times in every part of history where there are constellations of people that move things forward, and Coenda Press and Holly and Harry have done that. And I'm honored to get to know you both. I'm going to read two small poems from Love Poem to MPTF, which is a book of resurrection and continuance, which is incredibly moving. I've chosen some poems out of the middle, which are, you know, sort of more like middle children when we make books. Sometimes they're less known. So this is Day in Triple Light. I see a tree and I see a pitcher. And in that twirling stillness, a tower, a height within 3 breaths, 1 poetry, 1 cedar, 1 nonfiction, each one quiet in its length and light. What is above all is a table. While one looks away to offer help, another reaches out to give, the other travels to bless a marriage. There is nothing greater than sitting still, reading a book. Nothing greater than walking to wake oneself from loss or danger, to escape the argument of rhetoric. I just love that line. The journey wakes itself to bewilder. Oval, rock, bridge, tracks, train, bench, to bewilder the scene, to be kind to one's loss, to offer loss as a benefit, to escape a diminishing darkness that recedes until once again opened. A search for communication has hope, written in support, friendship, care, a hope devoid of moonlight on water, hope devoid of nothing but a giving hand. And then another little poem, none of the poems are little, they're all like big. So I'm going to try not to cry. But tucked in the middle of this book, pastoral. There's a sorrow beyond sorrow that appears when you walk among roses or pear trees, that comes no other place than when you stand by a newly plowed field and you lift your trumpet to your lips and you play clean, clear notes, and there's no one around to grieve with you. It's just you and your sister. A place lifted up by you alone, a memory of no one around but beauty and breath, a place to build a symphony of possible breath to blow notes through a horn before all this stillness and nothing is heard. Thank you, Harry. You helped me to write better. And I'm moved by your life and your life with Holly and your intrepid nature. Bye.
Thank you so much, Holiday. Next up, we have Sarah McClay. Sarah, go ahead.
I'm working on the video. Hang on just a second. Okay. All right. Essay, Susan, Quentin, Yvonne, thank you guys so much for putting this together. It's really wonderful to be part of it and to also feel like I'm continuing to learn all of these additional strands of Harry. One of the first things I resonated with about Harry and Holly and was thankful for was that all three of us were from wide open country, sparsely populated, and yet had chosen to follow our artistic dreams also into the heart of the city too. Well, there's no leaving that initial landscape, the way it infects us. It gave me hope to see the way they've been doing this for years. When I think of Harry, I think in these words: Sam Shepard, Gary Cooper, lean, lanky, generous, intense, down to earth, plain spoken, unaffected, also erudite, sophisticated, flexible, tenacious, maybe above all, devoted, especially in the most gallant and valiant, exemplary way to Holly Prado. And I think he'll be okay with these words since he has made a poetry, not only of poetry, but also in wave after wave of long-running projects and modes, Cahuenga Press, ×3, the immersive marathon readings of poets like Thomas McGrath at Beyond Baroque, Harry's Poetry Hour, where so many of us have been blessed with his invitations to read our own poems and those of others, both championing and amplifying the poetry community here and also educating us, not only about the work of other poets, but also about ourselves, about the nature of our work, reframing and mirroring and illuminating us back in ways that might give us a different or more defined forward momentum. In one ×3 piece, he cast us as film stars. Cecilia Wallach was Teresa Russell. Once he introduced my poems with a comparison to Helen Frankenthaler, which made me feel both freshly seen and even more directed toward exploring that path. Harry, you're such a role model for us. You keep on writing, growing, exploring, thinking outside of whatever box might box others in. And you do it all with gracious charm and genuine warmth and interest. Since we're also celebrating the poems of the realms that you and Holly created, I want to end with gratitude and admiration for both of you by reading the poem that first ushered me into those realms when I heard Holly read from her book Esperanza at Laurel Ann's iconic LACMA poetry series in 1998. It's a poem that also feels right to me too right now in this change of seasons, in this season of change. She talks about this poem a little bit in the introduction by bringing us momentarily into a dream from 1991, where she says, I see myself standing directly in front of a large tree. The area behind and around me is clear, but the tree blocks my way. This puzzles me since the rest of the space is open and I can, it seems, simply walk past the tree. But I can't. the tall, upheaving one. The cypress that I pray to, it can fly. Nothing is a single species. We're made of bark, then avalanche. Orpheus can make us anything, can make us God's own door. Cypress or oak or black, to be accepted there across the boundary, as when I leave the house this morning, walking, nothing painful in my legs. I tell misunderstanding, this is our last year together. Then I see, just up the street, that planets are our bodies. Their mouths slam through my wrists. I was a child who practiced jumping from the top of anything right into the air. Music was a swirl of vines and leaves that left my throat. I'm calling, and I'm waiting, and I'm called to. This black, the pure unknown, which finds its way exactly like the song you can't get rid of. The one I start with now and won't give up. The God obsessed with worship that is memorized, abiding until the prayer itself moves inside out, converts these worlds of sliding rock to fragrance. I'm calling, and I'm calling, and I'm called. Lots of love.
Thank you, Sarah. It's beautiful. Next up, we're welcoming Gail Ronsky. Gail, please join us.
Hi. Hi, Harry. This has been an amazing tribute so far. I've enjoyed listening to everybody so much. And I want to thank Susan and SA for organizing this beautiful tribute. And I want to thank Quentin and Yvonne for hosting us. It's just a beautiful thing to do. I don't have as much history with Harry as many of you do. I met Harry just, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something at a reading he and Holly did at Loyola Marymount. And I think Sarah brought them in. And I was familiar with Holly's poetry, but I hadn't read any of Harry's poetry. And so when he read, it was brand new to me. And he read some political poems that night that were very intense. And I thought, wow, this guy seems so gentle. And yet, he's got this really intense side to him. And then the next time I heard him read, he read, I think it was at Beyond Baroque, he read love poems to Holly that absolutely brought tears to my eyes. I think I still had tears in my eyes when I went up to talk to him afterwards about it. They were so moving. I've been honored to have been invited to Harry's Poetry Hour to read my own work and also to give a talk on the work of Wallace Stevens, which I absolutely loved doing. And like Wallace Stevens, whose whole world is imagination, Harry has an incredible imagination. His poems are full of imagination, and he really does show me over and over again that poem at the end of the mind that Wallace Stevens talks about. I'm going to read two short poems. The first one, they're both from the Love Poem to MPTF book, and The Body Left Inside. And this one has this beautiful anaphora, which I love. And the greenhouse in the circle, and the hat in the shadow, and the eye-opening blood, and the round blueness, and the pinnacle propping open, and the road over roundness, and the yellow rose shooting ahead, and the revolving clock inside, and the silver stars surrounding the window, and the river one way in silver light, and corn husks before jet planes, and the hammock beside the pier, and arrows atop the coffin, and a red rose beside Arrow's target, and the tall dark door, and shafts of wheat round her eye, and an opened hand beside a fence, and an index finger near an exploding star, and a still bird inside a cage, and a body draped in white, and a hand in shadow above an orange grove, and white feet in river beside the boat, and water the color of silver running through the opened door. Each one of those lines could be the title of a fabulous poem. I'm tempted to try to do it, Harry. And then another short poem, but again, the imagination in this is so beautiful. For Nightfall. Bless you, muse, for the calls from the sensual tall trees thick with foliage, for the old oak branches bare that entices me to look at it from various angles, for the evening light striking the 3 Chinese elms, for the clarity of light on green. I stand before trees daily and crawl in darkness over cut wood, while clouds curl around her eye, to see the green on one side and the shadow on the other, the lanes between I walk in solace. Thank you so much, and bless you, Harry.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we have Pam Ward. Pam, please join us.
Okay. Okay. All right, here I am. Can you see me, hear me?
Yep, all good.
Thank you. Okay, first I want to just thank Susan. I want to thank Essay, the Frolicker Griffith. I want to thank you, Quentin, but most of all, I want to thank you, Harry, for all the work that you do. And I'm just going to jump into your poem. I love your love poetry, so I thought I would read one of your newer ones that I found on Cultural Daily. This is called Minus Reply. The man loaded his Studebaker station wagon to a friend who drove to a lady's house. The loner hid on the folded down seat and covered himself with a blanket. The friend drove with his lady to the grove and made love to her while the loner listened. The same man who loaned his car to his friend had another friend who loaned a lavender Thunderbird. While the driver stood outside, the man sat in the passenger seat, and the girl with the large freckles hiked up her skirt, pulled her panties down, and sat on top of the young man in the passenger seat of a T-Bird, moved up and down until he came. The 2 men worked together in the men's clothing store. The same man went to a town 80 miles away with a man who owned a salmon-colored Ford convertible. The owner was going with a cheerleader from the junior college team. After the Friday night football game, the 2 men and the cheerleader drove to a steamy part of town where the younger man went into an Indian woman's house, and the other side of a curtain screwed the Indian woman for $9 while her husband watched television in the first room. The young man from another town passed through. when he was 17, he asked a cab driver in San Francisco where he could find a woman to fuck. The cabbie took him to a hotel in a room where he could see the bay. She washed his dick in warm water. She unzipped her gray dress and they fucked before he sailed to Hawaii for duty at Pearl Harbor. All this to say the young man was hungry and he never really solved his loneliness until his passion for acting took him to Manhattan. His devotion to poetry took him to a finality that has never seemed final nor free. But he found a woman who loved him and he never, ever disconnected. That's some Harry for your ass. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. This has been just really wonderful, the whole program. I just want to mention we are still waiting a little bit on Celeste Goyer and Jim Cushing. I think they'll be here in just a minute. But I just want to say, you know, this has been an absolutely stunning series of readings and remarks. I'm just so glad to have all of you here. Next up, we do have S.A. Griffin, who's back to say a few more words, give his tribute to Harry. So S.A., please go ahead and join us.
Hi, first I want to apologize to Jeanette and bring my wife Lorraine in here because one of the groups of people, here she is right here, there she is. I left out were librarians, specifically art librarians, and my wife was a part of our list. And Lorraine made it possible for this to happen today because as I was frantically trying to get across to everybody earlier, I mean, I was about to shoot myself in the head. I was trying for 20 minutes to get onto Zoom and it wouldn't allow me because it kept telling me I had to update. Yes, thank you, Jeanette. We all owe our lives to librarians, especially. If the library at Alexandria hadn't burned down twice, just think we would have walked on the moon probably in the 18th century. So anyway, thank you, Jeanette. Everyone, honest to God, this has been really beautiful. More than Susan, I think, and I could have imagined, and probably Harry as well. I have one of the things that we had wanted to do in the live version of this in our dreams was displays. We had, Susan and I had put together some posters from Harry's films, which of course I can't show you. But what I have over here is, first off, I have Harry's typewriter. When I went to help Harry and Holly after the fire, Harry was asked by one of this. I said, absolutely. And then one of the other things that happened was I went out to the dumpster because I was helping them clear out books and stuff. And I looked in the dumpster, and the bottom of the dumpster were these Harry's scripts. And one of the scripts, I mean, there's from Reform School Girls is in here, Kansas, but this one from Taxi Driver. And Taxi Driver, when I was in college, my brief time in college, I used to, for extra money, I would screen films for the students. I mean, feature films. And the day that we showed Taxi Driver, I was the only person in the audience. And after I screened it the first time, I ran home and got my girlfriend and said, "You have to come back with me to see the screening of this film. This is the most mind-blowing film I've ever seen." Little did I know that Harry would become a part of my life after seeing him in this film. And it's really a seminal landmark film. Something I wanted to say about Harry, everyone's touched on too, and I'm getting emotional just thinking about this. And I also wanted to say to Harry directly, the whole time that we've been doing this, Holly's always been in our hearts and in our minds, and we miss her every day. I mean, it's impossible to think of you without Holly and Holly without you. But once upon a time, I had a chance to squire about a very famous poet. And so I was taking him to the airport after taking him around all day to see people do things. And back then you could still sit in the belly of the airport, LAX, and you could have coffee and tea and cake with somebody. We sat for 3 hours. We talked about what is poetry. At the end of 3 hours, the conclusion was candor. Harry is one of the only people I have ever known who exhibits candor, not just in his poetry, but in his character. Harry is candor, and it moves me greatly. I've told people many times in my life, if there's one person I could be like, it would be Elwood P. Dowd. And Harry and Elwood P. Dowd are almost one of the same person. They're so giving and generous. So they love the world and everyone in it so much, and their commitment to being human. Harry, as a poet and an actor, has always been an inspiration for me, as I've been so fortunate in my life to make a career out of what I came here to do, which was act and write. So thank you, Harry, and thank you for all that you do for everyone. You're an ongoing inspiration, and I spend my life as a student of you and a student of the world. And thank you, Susan, so much for joining me on this journey as I joined you. And the great joy of doing this was actually being able to plan this with Harry and have lunches with him and laugh quite a bit, actually. And that's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to read a couple of poems. This is from one of my favorite books of poetry. Bill Moore published it for Harry. Eros Ash. And it's one of my favorite books of poetry by anybody. And I'm going to read the last 2 pages. Humility. Master, I have come to learn from you. You are mad to go through the body to the mouth. The mouth has learned to lie about love. Are we only the seasons, are lost? And approach me through love with work. Master, I have come to forget myself. The music which I cannot possess, you have offered. Does this make me any poorer? A lowrider, justly anticipation. Eros, you must dance snows in hat bands of your arrows. When we ask for boats to finish us home, a lowrider, justly anticipation. Aphrodite hikes through the wild, grasses the arrow tips, her thighs unsheathed, swims emeralds, with breasts, shields, death ends. Hermes must die for listening. And that was written in May in 1974. And then I'm going to do a short one. This is in the Poetry Bomb, a project of mine from 2010. Skins. The sun wore arrows, and suddenly we're at war. Waterfall and prisons. The white bird has to be a fork, resurrecting lost kindnesses. Backs up white flames, fragments caught on dead branches. Porcupines of light. September 21st, 2008. Written in East Los Angeles. Thank you again, Harry. Thank you, Quentin, Yvonne, Jimmy, and everyone at Beyond Baroque. And thank you for pinch hitting Quentin and hosting this for us. Thank you to everyone. This has really been a beautiful event. It's not over yet, so let the love go on. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you to my beautiful wife, Lorraine.
Thank you, S.A. It's my pleasure to step in and host this. It's just been so beautiful. I think we're still missing Jeanette and Celeste and Jim. So I think we're just going to go on to Bill Moore. So please, Bill, go ahead and join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Quentin. Thank you, everyone, for being here. When I was appointed the first poetry editor of Papa Bach Bookstore's nascent literary magazine in the fall of 1971, I hustled off to the Wednesday night Beyond Baroque Poetry Workshop and encountered a number of poets whose work I selected for the first time for the first issue. Is there an echo here? Hello?
I think everyone is muted elsewhere. Otherwise, let me see.
I heard another voice.
I think Jim and Celeste just joined us. Jim, if you could mute yourself, yeah. But go ahead, Bill.
What? I'll start over again. When I was appointed the first poetry editor of Papa Bach Bookstore's nascent literary magazine in the fall of 1971, I hustled off to the Wednesday night Beyond Baroque Poetry Workshop and encountered a number of poets whose work I selected for the first issue, including the poet-actor Harry E. Northup. When I started attending that workshop on a regular basis, I quickly discovered that even among this group of maverick poets, Harry Northup's voice stood out for its impetuous clarity. Here, I remember thinking to myself, is a poet impatient with any hint of predictability. Harry went on to appear in my own poetry magazine, Momentum, and to become one of the first poets published by my publishing project, Momentum Press. Along with books by Jim Crusoe, Lee Hickman, Holly Prado, Alicia Ostreicher, and Jim Moore, Harry Northup's Eros Ash, and Enough, the Great Running Chapel, remain emblematic of that period in Los Angeles poetry. Harry is also one of only 8 poets to appear in both of my anthologies, The Streets Inside and Poetry Loves Poetry. In getting Harry's writing out into the world, I want to mention someone who was crucial to Harry's maturation as a poet. Yes, as Harry is often mentioned, Lee Hickman turned him on to poetry when they were both young actors in New York City. But Hickman also did something in the early 1980s that was beyond astonishing. I had proposed to Harry when he inquired about publishing one of his manuscripts that we do a large book, 3 of his manuscripts, but I desperately needed a typesetter even more familiar with Harry's work than I was. Fortunately, Lee Hickman drove over to Beyond Baroque and in a mere dozen hours typeset almost perfect copy of 200 pages of dense lyrical poetry. The smallest room on the second floor of Beyond Baroque, where that work was done, remains consecrated in my memory as the place where Harry's poems initially attained in print culture the visibility they had so long deserved in their full-length versions. It is fitting, therefore, that Beyond Baroque has been the host for this event, for the attachment between Harry and LA's oldest literary venue is not just a matter of the affection of his audience and readership. Rather, Beyond Baroque has served as an instance of how its facilities have given his words a permanent place in the ongoing legend of a perpetual renaissance on the West Coast of the United States. Today we have gathered as poets living and working in Los Angeles, but the radical quality of Harry's poetry should not be limited to some myopic understanding of the so-called local. It should be said that Harry, in particular, is one of the authentic heirs of Jack Spicer's poetry and poetics. I might well be the only one today who mentions Jack Spicer, but I would be remiss if I did not mention him. Harry's poems in Enough, the Great Running Chapel, for instance, exemplify Spicer's proposition that only the poem in series is a transmission worth fully absorbing. And like Spicer, there is in Northup's poetry an utter refusal to submit to the blandishments of commodified poetics or the careerism that marks so much contemporary work. The antinomian spirit of American poetry radiates throughout Harry Northup's work. I myself remain especially fond of sequences such as I Cut My Mind Open in an Esso Station, or the poem that Amy started this tribute with, The Images We Possess Kill the Capturing, a book that by chance I ended up having the honor of typesetting. Another of my favorites is The Lord is My Preposition, and its opening line, Harry has no idea of how often I have thought it his line. Sweet sir and sunset lit me out, poor souled, torn patience. His is a street level metaphysics. Only Harry Northup knows how to make a poem dolly down the aisle of a bus, tracking the progression of a passenger toward that which most repulses him. And only Harry Northup can turn from that gritty scene and allow us to find succor in his own love for his late poet spouse, Holly Prado. Finally, in this era where blurbs on the back cover of a book have replaced insightful extended commentary, it can be a jolt to realize that once upon a time, a Los Angeles poet received not just brief notices, but substantial reviews. An eventual co-founder of Cahuenga Press. In fact, Jim Cushing wrote one of the 2 best reviews that Harry has ever received, and I wish to thank him for it again. I think at this point, we have waited long enough to hear from the poet himself.
Actually, Bill, I'm going to cut in really quick. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But Jim and Celeste just joined us. So I think what we're going to do is have them say a few words and then bring you back just to say a few more words about Harry.
All right, and I'll read the bio that that essay provided me to introduce Harry. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Bill. And so we have with us Jim Cushing and Celeste Goyer. They are here together. So Jim and Celeste, take it away. Thank you.
So shall I proceed with the poems of Harry's that I plan to read?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay. I will read my first poetry book from East Hollywood Memorial to Reason. My first poetry book. Amarillo Born, my first poetry book, was published in 1966. I had written poetry most weekdays from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. for a year. I chose 30 poems, including His Dog, Atwater, Ohio, and Fingers Wet with Rain. Max Jeremy, an artist, contributed 10 of his art pieces. Victor Argo, a fellow actor in Frank Corsero's acting class, was a union printer. He stole 10,000 sheets of paper, including a heavier stock for the front and back covers. Emma, also a student in Corsero's class, owned a printing shop in Midtown Manhattan. Lee Hickman, who had turned me on to poetry earlier that year, typed up the poems on special paper on an IBM Selectric typewriter at the publishing company where he was working. One Saturday, Victor, my first wife Rita, and I met Emma at her printing office. Victor worked the printing machine. Rita, Emma, and I collated and stapled the book. At the end of the day, thanks to my friends and wife, I had 300 copies of Amarillo Born. And finally, I will read Road Returns Brightness. Thanks for having us here. We're thrilled to be part of this tribute to wonderful poet and actor and friend and human being, Harry Northup. Road Returns Brightness. Wheat fields surround a picture window. In the right corner, where home was, cinder blocks, 4 units to a building. Base, housing project, dirt roads, fields, hills, furrows, barbed wire, posts, red snow fences. Why would I want to visit where you and Jimmy grew up? Mother's grave for one, family's home, daddy's grave, potato salad in rectangular pan covered with wax paper on backseat floor, dust, barns, rusted out cars. The home has been lost, and the wire turns and yellow flowers are released by spin and snap, family dispersed. Photos alone held symmetry, angles, diagonals, triangles, resentments, hunger and sarcasm, sadistic barbs. One might hope that prayer soothes, but often the prayer makes hunger for affluence. Wounds are lost to materialists. Money champions aloneness. The family once traveled, once welcomed family members. Oldness, rigidity, flowers beckon, sprung rhyme. Reason born from white, charmed bird. A boy on a sled, on snow, on hill. Choir and horses. Hill to viaduct, left curve to connecting memory. Our hearts burdened no longer. No measure too great to love. To separate superiority from death. She waits. He squares his hat. Been waiting long, sailor? Pain, walker, survivor plates. Oldness has value. Recovery once, before beckons. Her hands, door, small house, room for all family members from back east. Train, bus, winter, bless the hole in the red sky. We love you, Harry.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Quentin. Thank you, everybody at Beyond Baroque. And thank you, Harry Northup, for embodying the spirit of poetry for as long as I have known him, which is more than half of my life. From his magnificent collection, The Ragged Vertical, published in 1996. Father-son dialogue. I'm sorry this car is old. I wish that we had a better one. At least you don't have to take a bus. At least you don't have to walk. De Niro may be the best actor. Yeah, but he's not the best basketball player. Did you enjoy the Grateful Dead concert in Oakland? Yeah, it's a lot more mellow than punk. Did you go to a concert every night? No, just one night. What'd you do the other nights? Where did you sleep? In the truck. Cold? Yeah, I was glad to get home. We just walked around the parking lot. A lot of people there. Yeah, it was jammed. We just looked at the people. We saw one couple, punk. He had a long red mohawk and he had a thing they put on mean dogs, a muzzle. Yeah, and she was leading him around like a dog. She had him on a harness. We ate a lot of falafels, vegetarian ones. I liked them. Was it rough there? Everything seemed okay. No trouble. How many of you went? 6. We all chipped in to rent the truck. Look, I'm glad you went and I'm glad you had a good time and I'm real glad you're home safe. But next time, tell me what you're up to. Where are you going? Who with? For how long? Okay? Okay. Listen, let's get together and go see a movie this Tuesday night, okay? Sure, I'd like to see you. Let's talk Sunday or Monday. Father-son dialogue 2. Son. We've been going to Huntington Beach, Rudy and me. Saturday, I surfed twice. We stayed out there 3 hours at Huntington. It was really, really fun. Sunday, we went 3 times. First, we went to Huntington. It wasn't that good. Next, we went to Redondo. It was pretty fun. It was huge. I went to so many places. Father. I took the bus from West Hollywood to East Hollywood, caught it on Fairfax, north to Hollywood Boulevard, east to Normandy. I sat in the middle of the back seat. There were 2 drunk Indians, both ex-Marines. Both had tattoos, ponytails, and both wore tank tops. One was sitting to the left of me, also in the back seat. The other sat in the aisle seat right in front of us. Son. I stayed away from the crowd. The waves were 2 to 4 feet and the set waves were 5 feet. It was fun. You can get a ride all the way in. Father. The Indian in front saw a white man about 30 reading a book. What are you reading? A play by Shakespeare. He's English, right? The man nodded, yes. All Englishmen are fags. Are you English? I'm an actor. All actors are fags. The bus moved east on Hollywood past La Brea. Son. I bought some brand new wheels. They have pictures of guitars, women, and pizzas on them. I have my own board. Ian gave me some tracks for my birthday. I sanded my board down. It's all wood. I'm going to draw a wave on it and shellac it. Father. Slowly along the boulevard, the seats and aisles filled up with blacks, Asians, Mexicans, Iranians. The Indians were fucking with each other. The one in the back kept pulling the other's ponytail. They began insulting blacks, women, Mexicans. They were totally disillusioned and full of hatred. Their deepest disgust was toward blacks and homosexuals. Son. There's a lot of people at the beach today. We laid out in the sun. I was tired from all that surfing. I had rides that I could ride all the way into the shore. I'm glad there's no school this week. I'm going to the beach every day. Father. There was a young, powerfully built black man with a big ass who was being pushed toward the back. He was obviously homosexual. He was wearing a blue tank top and blue shorts. By the time the bus reached Vine, he was pressed to the back. He now stood facing forward, his ass right smack up in front of the Indian's face. What the Indian hated most was right in his face. I thought this is a perfect short story about a dispossessed Indian and discrimination. What a person hates most will eventually be right in his face. I got off the bus at Normandy. Father-Son Dialogue 2 from Harry Northup's The Ragged Vertical. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of sharing this poem with you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Celeste, both of you for being here. I think we're ready to bring Bill Moore back to go ahead and introduce the man himself, Harry Northup. So please, Bill, come back on screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Quentin. Harry E. Northup, a poet and actor, has had 12 books of poetry published, the latest being Love Poem to MPTF, Cahuenga Press, 2020. He received his BA in English from California State University, Northridge, where he studied verse with Anne Stanford. Northup made a living as an actor for 34 years, acting in 37 films, including Mean Streets, 1973, Taxi Driver, 1976, Palme d'Or winner at Cannes, The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, Oscar winner for Best Picture. He also starred in the acclaimed cult film Over the Edge. Harry has been a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences since 1976. Lewis McAdams in the LA Weekly wrote, Northup is the poet laureate of East Hollywood. I wish we were at Beyond Baroque right now and that Harry could see us as we all rose to our feet and gave him a prolonged standing ovation. In lieu of that, I present to you Harry Northup himself.
Thank you very much, Quentin Ring, director of Beyond Baroque, even and its founder, George Drury Smith. Thank you, Susan Hayden and S.A. Griffin, for making this happen. I love you both dearly. Thank each one of you for your loving, insightful readings and song and kind remarks. You've all moved me deeply. From 1963 to 1968, I studied method acting with Frank Corsaro in New York City. In that class was Leland Hickman, who turned me on to poetry. One day in 1966, when I was 26, after Lee and I had finished rehearsing a scene for class, he handed me a copy of The New American Poetry, 1945-1960, edited by Donald M. Allen, published by Grove Press. I went home and read it. I realized that you didn't have to be an intellectual or college professor to write poetry. You could write from your own experiences. I had learned to use my own experiences and observations in Corsaro's class. I began to buy and read books by poets in that anthology: Charles Olson, Paul Blackburn, Gary Snyder, Allen Ginsberg. They have all been important to me. Ginsberg gave me a sense of freedom, Snyder, a way of working, precision, Olson, a use of the personal and mythic in the long poem, Blackburn, vision. I wrote every day, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. that year. One night at St. Mark's Church, I read 3 of my poems. Paul Blackburn, The Cities, 1960, Grove Press, came up to me, said some nice things about my poems. About one poem that had the sounds of being in jail, keys jingling, cell door closing, he said, quote, make your point, don't go on for sound, don't mark time, cut back, and wait till the action starts again. I asked him, how does one learn to be a poet? 2 ways, he replied, reading and writing. In March of 1968, my first wife, Rita, and I arrived in Santa Monica. Several months later, an article appeared in the Santa Monica Outlook about the opening of Beyond Baroque, a literary center on West Washington in Venice. It announced that there would be poetry readings on Friday nights. I began attending the readings. On February 26, 1969,
the free Wednesday night poetry workshop began. I was one of its original members. The workshop was coordinated by Joseph Hansen and John Harris. One thing I liked about the workshop was that a person would read a poem and people in the circle would respond to the poem. The reader would listen and not respond, would not argue. I like that. Reading a poem, listening to others' responses, taking it all in and moving on. One of the great things in the workshop was the presence of literary magazine editors, Bill Moore, Momentum Press, Michael C. Ford, Sunset Palms Hotel, the editors of the many Beyond Broke Lit Mag manifestations. You would read a poem and an editor would say, I'd like to publish that in my magazine. It was wonderful to get your poems published that way. Cowboy Angel was the first long poem I wrote. I took the manuscript to George Drury Smith in his apartment above the Poetry Center. He published the first 15 pages with colored illustrations in Beyond Broke 7/11 in 1971. I was thrilled. Looking back at Beyond Broke, after many years of writing poetry, it is the place itself that stands out. A place of poetry readings, poets and old ones, new poets and old ones, lyric poets, epic poets, protest poets, experimental poets, a place where the free Wednesday night poetry workshop still continues 54 years after it began, a place where the authentic act of composing poetry binds us together, a mostly non-commercial act in LA, the most commercial city in America. I cherish and will always cherish the poets I met at Beyond Broke. In the early 1970s, I studied verse and structural grammar with Ann Stanford at CSUN, where I received a BA in English. I fell in love with Ann Stanford and her poetry and channeled that love into my poetry. In that 1 year, she inspired me to write 3 manuscripts of poetry. Each one of those manuscripts was published. In 1977, I read Feasts, published by Momentum Press by the late Holly Prado, and fell in love with her writing. We met, began going together, fell in love, lived together, got married. We talked poetry morning to night. She was always loving, supportive, non-judgmental. We were together for 42 years. She made me a better man, a better poet. I love Holly and continue to work for her writing. In 1989, Holly and I and 4 other poets founded Cahuenga Press, a poets publishing cooperative, Bill Moore and Cecilia Wallach among them. Founding members James Cushing, Phoebe McAdams, and me, and a new member, Jeanette Clough, are presently in the press. I admire, respect, and love their poetry. We have published 29 books of poetry. The spirit of Holly Prado is alive in the press. David Lloyd Glover, the late Don Sherman, and I started the blog Times Times 3 in 2011. I am deeply thankful to David for his wonderful art and Don and all the poets who have participated. On September 25th, 2017, Holly and I moved into the Motion Picture and Television Fund in Woodland Hills. We were both overwhelmingly grateful, and I still am. When COVID hit in March of 2020, Jennifer Clymer, director, MPTF Studios, encouraged me to do a 1-hour weekly poetry show on Zoom and stream live on an on-campus TV channel, 1390 and 99.96, to the residents and staff's TV screens. We have done 168 poetry shows. I am thankful to Jennifer Clymer and the Creative Chaos team Bob Beecher, CEO, President, MPTF, who has initiated many poetry shows and appeared on them. Courtney Bailey, Chief Development Officer, MPTF, for their loving support of the creative. To have a poetry show in the motion picture country home is amazing. I want to thank MPTF residents, Corinne Conley, Helen Richmond, Kay Wiseman, for their many superlative readings on the programs, as well as the many outstanding poets who have read their poetry on the show, many of whom are here today. A college professor once said, the main theme in American literature is a search for home. Beyond Baroque, the home Holly and I shared with my son Dylan, Coanga Press, MPTF are my homes. Writing poetry and the poetry hour are the reasons I get up in the morning and love. I love all of you. We met in poetry and we continue in poetry. Thank you for inviting me into your hearts. I'm going to close with 3 poems, 2 of them from Love Poem to MPTF. Love Poem to MPTF. Sitting in the Roddy McDowell Rose Garden, I see a bubbling pool, sunlight on benches, tree with red leaves, circles, statues, plaques, roses of many colors surround me. If there is a place more peaceful on earth, I don't know it. More cooperative, helpful, harmonious, I am unaware. Greenery, lit paths, hands like waterfalls reach out to help. Hands like pillows protect a fall. Within white roses, a found home. 2:35 a.m. A footnote, but a big note. MPTF started in 1921, and for 102 years, it has had a legacy of giving. And I want to thank all of you for your giving to poetry, to MPTF when you come on the show, and to me for all your kind and loving remarks. 2:35 a.m. Between the night and the dawn are words of gratitude, praise, thankfulness to friends, residents, staff at MPTF for their care and support. Between the morning and night are hellos, nice day, good to see you, kindness in hallways, dining room, a willingness to help ever present, safety, love, may I call it love? When bad memory disposes names within seconds, returns to personal history, mixes, casts names with film titles, when the doom of dementia, of fall, Alzheimer's, death is ever present, one out, one in, the saying goes, oasis, the last stop, cocoon, call it what you like, a safe, quiet, beautiful home among nature. Small miracles brought us here. My wife says she sleeps peacefully. And the last poem I wrote 2 days ago, An Answer for Ruth Elliott. A woman who lives in a cottage has taken me from sorrow and grief to love and joy. She has stayed with me nights. Her hands, body, spirit have awakened my body, my spirit to feel her within, without, even when she's gone. A mother of 7, a receiver of visions. We eat together, walk, go to movies, laughter ever present. She's a marvelous storyteller, a body clean and white and smooth. In my 9th decade, I've been given love in a bounteous way. She has told me of her children and I've met one, a woman who loves me, whom I love, grace, divinity, a gift never expected. She is not only the answer to a prayer, but a prayer indeed, a woman love. Thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Harry. I think I can say on behalf of everyone, we all love you. It was beautiful. I'd like to invite everybody to just turn on their camera and give your love and appreciation to Harry, and maybe just we can all say goodbye that way. Thank you, everyone who is here from the audience as well. I want to give a big shout out to Yvonne Salinas, a programs coordinator who's behind the scenes. But thank you to all the readers. This tribute was really, truly moving. But above all, thank you, Harry.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. Thank you, Quentin and Beyond Baroque, and again, Susan and Harry. Harry, that was just out of the ballpark, man.
Oh, it'll be there somewhere.
Yeah, beautiful.
I'm happy to be here, and this is community right here. You know, what we say on the Poetry Hour sometimes is it's a sacred hour. This is a sacred almost 3 hours. I've all learned from all of you. And one thing I started in Beyond Broke, and I'm here at MPTF. And one thing that MPTF has done is show that as we get older, we're not invisible. And as Jennifer Clymer has said, it's a place that has protection, and it's also a place to express yourself and keep your creativity alive in a joyful way. So it really is, as Amy Gersler once said on the program, a little piece of heaven. So thank you all very much. And this has just been a singular day in my life, and I can never thank you enough. So thank each one of you, and it's beyond even words. So you're all in my heart. And as I said at one point, thank you all for inviting me into your heart. And once again, thanks to Susan, Hayden, and S.A. Griffin for, as Larry Terman once said, he said that a producer is one who causes something to happen. He gets the idea from a book and he causes the film to be made. And Susan and S.A., with Beyond Broke, you have caused this event to take place. And so it's a once in a lifetime event for me, and it's never happened to me before. So thank you all very much.
You're the cause, Harry. You're the great cause for all of us.
Yeah. Love you, Harry.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Susan, S.A., and everyone. I hope to see you all in person sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Quentin.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Harry.
What an afternoon. Wonderful.
Wish I could give you a hug.
Thank you, everybody.
Inspirational.
Bye, everybody.
Did it start yet?
It's all over. Bye, Harry.
We do it again.
I missed the first part.
Okay, everybody, tell Harry what you really think.
Thank you, S.A. Griffin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Guys,
you,
I have a question.
Thank you, S.A. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Quentin, is there any way to keep the chat somewhere? The chat is wonderful.
You can save the chat.
Yes. Is
push
there
on the
any,
little dots.
there's no way, Susan is shaking her head, no way to save the chat, huh?
No, I was shaking my head about something else.
Oh, okay.
I think whoever's in charge of this can actually cut and paste it and save it.
They can save the chat somehow?
Whoever's maybe Ivan, maybe I think whoever actually has control of the thing, just like when I'm teaching.
The chat can be saved. I've seen it done on other meetings.
The chat is a treasure. The chat is really a treasure.
The whole thing was a treasure. Honest to God, you guys.
Absolutely.
It was so beautiful. Everything was so beautiful.
Thank you, SA, so much. And, we were all worried about, well, the format of
Yeah.
it. It turned out to be wonderful.
No, it did. Turned out to be wonderful. And Harry, I'm so happy for you. I'm
Yes.
so happy for you.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. God, it was so beautiful.
Harry, thank you so much for including those of us at MPTF into this amazing family and community that you have. This has been just wonderful. And that new poem,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
A new era of Harry.
More love poems.
I'm glad I was listening.